this very morning. Now, yesterday, during the reading of the national budget of the country for the financial year 2022-2023, of course, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Kasaija Matia, who is, of course, one of the prominent people in the ministry, declared that the exchange rates of the Ugandan shillings against the dollar had initially strengthened, appreciating by about 2.3% between April 2021 and April 2022. This appreciation was on account of higher dollar inflows from our exports and, of course, foreign direct investment and foreigners buying government treasury bills and bonds. However, the shilling has experienced significant depreciation pressures since March 2022 on account of concerns arising from the Ukraine-Russian war and these related sanctions, as well as the rising interest rates in advanced economies. The shilling depreciated by 1.7% month-on-month average, that is in the 3 months to June 2022. And of course, that is a decrease that happened due to quite a number of factors, due to price shocks around the world and the globe and different other things that the minister outlined here in the budget. Now, the Bank of Uganda is taking appropriate measures to avoid volatile fluctuations, but not preventing the exchange rate movements. That was his say on the weakening of the shilling, as well as the coming on board of the dollar, coming very strong, weakening, of course, the Ugandan shilling and, of course, other East African shillings. But he also mentioned concerning interest rates that the shilling-dominated loans marginally declined to 18.8% in the 10-month period that ended April 2022, down from 19.1% in the same period in the previous year. Reduction in lending rates occurred in the transport and communication, building, mortgages, construction and real estate, and personal and household loans sector. We had, of course, a snippet of this during the reading of the national budget, and would like you to have a look.
Madam Speaker, over the past year, the Uganda shilling initially strengthened against the US dollars, appreciating by 2.3% between April 2021 and April 2022. This appreciation was on account of higher dollar inflows from our exports, foreign direct investment, and foreigners buying government treasury bills and bonds. However, the shilling has experienced significant depreciation pressures since March 2022 on account of concerns arising from the Ukraine-Russian conflict and related sanctions, as well as rising interest rates in advanced economies. The shilling depreciated by 1.7% month-on-month on average in the 3 months to June 2022, and by 6.7% against the US dollar between June 2021 and June 2022. The Bank of Uganda is taking appropriate measures to avoid volatile fluctuations, but not preventing the exchange rate movements. Interest rates. Madam Speaker, commercial bank lending rates for shilling-denominated loans marginally declined to 18.8% in the 10-month period of April 2022, down from 19.1% in the same period in the previous year. Reduction in lending rates occurred in the transport and communication, building, mortgages, construction, and real estate, and personal and household loans sector developments.
The Minister of Finance, Mr. Kasaija Matia, of course, giving us a little bit of what happened in terms of our exchange rate. Remember, the weakening of the shilling just started this year, but the shilling has been a very resilient currency over the dollar for the past 2 or 3 years or so, because given the fact that, we went through the depreciation of 2008 and now came out, and now, the shilling has been on a stable kind of a trend when it comes to the dollar. But of course, this came this year as a result of very many factors that are probably outside our control, but as well as, decrease in some of the foreign investments and so on that affected entirely how much, the shilling is being bought out using the dollar. Just to just break this down a little bit, the appreciation of the shilling usually occurs when there is a lot more export than import. Because as you export, it means that people are going to change the dollar into the Ugandan shillings and be able to access your goods. That means that you're putting your currency on demand as people are buying out your currency and of course using it to buy goods here in Uganda, because you cannot come to Uganda to a farmer and you want coffee and you give them US dollars. Usually they would want or prefer Ugandan shillings. So that way, as you transfer currency from the US dollar to the Ugandan shillings, you make our currency more valuable. On the other hand, if we have more imports than exports, definitely we are going to buy the dollar. We put the dollar on demand, and that creates a problem because the dollar runs short as everyone is buying it out, and of course that weakens our currency. So the minister was simply saying that in the year ended, of course, 2021 April, we had a lot more inflows of the foreign exchange through exports. We exported a lot, and this helped our country to be able to benefit from these. But as well, government was issuing treasury bonds and bills which were bought by foreign investors. Foreign investors are a good way to actually, bring about strengthening of the currency, because they bring in the foreign currency, which is usually stronger, and that helps us to kind of overcome some of the problems around inflation and, of course, weakening of our currency as well. So this is a way in which we can control inflation, according to the minister, by producing probably more than we import and try to cut down on our imports to be able to stabilize our currency. As well, the weakening was attributed to the Russian-Ukrainian war and all these other excuses we always have. But as well, we can do better and make a better impression probably in the next budget. Interest rates dropped, according to him, but as well, you're going to see later on in our stories that some of the interest rates are rising, and there are concerns, of course, about the current situation concerning interest rates due to the increment of the central bank rate from 6.5 to 7.5%, 100 basis point increase in the interest rate there. That's, of course, cutting across all now the sectors in terms of banking. That is a story we'll be following up, and of course later on the program as we look into the budget. But moving on to another story, in Botswana. Of course, Botswana is one of the states down in Southern Africa. Now, Botswana's banks have profit up in the Q1. The country's commercial banks recorded collective after-tax profits of about 525.9 million in the first 3 months of the year. Now, this comes, of course, at a time when very many banks have been struggling to keep up with this, increasing prices and so on, and the fluctuating central bank rates. But the country's banks recorded, of course, a collective after-tax profit of 529.6 million in the first 3 months of the year, an increase of about 77 million from the corresponding period in 2021. The latest Bank of Botswana figures released recently indicate that the difference between the two periods was higher net income, of course, interest, and lower provisions of bad or doubtful debts. The bank's performance in the first quarter of the year continues the sector's recovery from COVID-19, which saw their collective after-tax profits decline by 13% in 2020 to about 1.6 billion before improving to about 1.9 billion in the year 2021. The improving profitability among commercial banks comes as credit growth also increases, and with total outstanding loans to all sectors rising to about 69.6 billion in March, compared to 69 billion in February and 6.56 billion in March 2021. Local banks tightened their credit response to COVID-19, of course, in response to COVID-19, while the appetite for credit products in the local market also declined due to the impact of pandemic on business conditions and disposal incomes. In March, the household debt accounted for 66% of the total outstanding commercial bank loans, and within that, 71% were classified personal loans. Now, of course, this comes at a time when Botswana also was struggling to have to maintain their central bank rate and also trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. But nevertheless, the banks have actually issued financial results that indicate a very steady growth in terms of their net profit after tax, and in terms of creating more opportunities for people to actually borrow money and get credit for their businesses and grow, besides the fact that many businesses were struggling after the COVID-19 hit the entire world, notwithstanding Botswana as well. We'll be following up with that and more, of course, on the story will be coming up later on as we follow the different financial markets across Africa. Remember, we are not just concerned with the markets here in Uganda or in East Africa, but the markets on the African continent as well. Now, moving across the continent back to Kenya, Centum Investments, of course, sold 83.4% of its stake in Kenya's Sidian Bank for about 37 million to Access Bank. Of course, that is a Nigerian bank. Access Bank Holdings PLC also announced that its wholly owned subsidiary Access Bank PLC has entered into a bidding agreement with Centum Investment Company, that is Centum Investment Company PLC, also known as Centum, for the acquisition of the entire 83.4% equity stake held by Centum Investments in Sidian Bank Limited. The statement signed by Sunday Ekochi, who is the company secretary, noted the purchase consideration is approximately up to 15 billion nairas, which is 37 million US dollars, representing a price to book multiple of 1.1 times, based on the audited 31st March 2022 shareholders' equity of Sidian. Sidian will be merged with Access Bank subsidiary in Kenya and Access Bank Kenya to create a stronger banking institution better positioned to serve the Kenyan market. Of course, commenting on the transaction, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, the group chief executive, Access Corporation, said that the growth transaction being implemented in Kenya represents the relentless focus and execution of their strategic objectives within their banking subsidiary, even as they grow the other businesses within Access Corporation's core segments. The acquisition of Sidian Bank is a significant step in a scale and potential of Access Bank in Kenya, which represents the largest market and trade corridor in East Africa. The significant increase in scale and customer base presents us with enormous opportunity to support the growth in the various ecosystems as we are building in our trade and payment businesses. The economies of scale that derive therefrom will continue to drive and enhance contributions to all stakeholders. Mr. Roosevelt Ogbonna, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Access Bank, also said that the transaction will build on their earlier acquisition of the former Transactional Bank PLC, which is now Access Bank Kenya, and of course underscores their resolve to strengthen their presence in Kenya, a key African market that fits into their strategic focus for geographic earnings, growth, and diversification. The acquisition and intended subsequent merger will create a stronger and competitive balance sheet for Access Bank in Kenya, positioning it to be well placed to promote regional trade finance and other cross-border banking services in East African Community and broader COMESA region. The proposed combination with Access Bank Kenya would undoubtedly propel Access Bank into a strong contender in the Kenyan market with enhanced capacity to play a more impactful role in the growth of its economy while delivering increased profitability. And of course, the transaction was subject to regulatory approvals in Kenya and Nigeria. And if it goes through, it will be the second acquisition in Kenya for Access Bank, which acquired Translational Bank from Kenya, now called Access Bank of Kenya. In 2020, and of course in August 2020, that is Access Bank of Zambia, the limited entered into a definitive agreement with Kavmont Capital Holdings Zambia, which is regarding, of course, the acquisition of Kavmont Bank Limited, a subsidiary of CCHZ, and the subsequent merger of Kavmont Bank operations into Access Bank. That is Centum Investments there for you. Centum is a listed company as well on the Uganda Security Exchange, but majorly deals in investment in different financial markets, including securities such as treasury bonds, bills, and of course equities, but could be in the listed companies, but as well in other equities that are in other private companies. For example, now Sidian Bank, which is a bank that was, of course, a company owned by certain individuals, but Centum Investment decided to invest 83.4% in the equity of Sidian Bank. But now, currently, Centum has sold its shares or equities in the Sidian Bank to the foreign bank called Access Bank. The Nigerian bank, Access Bank, has been on a road trip, almost accessing banks all over Africa, starting from Zambia, now to Kenya, after accessing Translational Bank, which is now called Access Bank Kenya. Now it has moved as well to Sidian Bank Kenya. Really, it's trying to conquer the banking sector around Africa. Of course, it's one of the leading lenders, money lenders on the entire continent, lending to various institutions and individuals through its financial institutions that it has set in different parts of the continent. But of course, it's based in Nigeria, and now it's trying to grow its wings across the African continent, now in East Africa, down to South Africa, and other regions as well. So it's a good thing for the company, and we shall be looking into what Access Bank has for Sidian Bank now, in terms of growing their net revenue, in terms of helping the company to grow and building on the assets of the bank. As you know, banks deal with assets. The greater the assets of the bank, the safer it is to invest with such a bank, because that way liquidity can be eased, and of course money feels more secure in the hands of an asset-based bank rather than a bank that is simply a creditor bank. We're giving credit to people without much assets. So Sidian Bank, of course, now is in the hands of Access Bank, and we shall be seeing what happens next for Centum as well. Of course, Centum came out and said that they are going to use most of the gains from this sale, which were worth $37 million to invest in treasury bonds, especially in Kenya, where they look to get more profit and kind of make up for some of the losses they made in some of their investments. So Centum is still looking at investing in the capital markets. That is through treasury bonds in Kenya there. Remember, Kenya is going for an election very soon, and probably we should look at their treasury bonds now, because they could be very attractive as government is in need of money to finance elections and of course aftermaths of elections. So probably they have very good coupon rates on their treasury bonds in Kenya, and Centum Investment Company is looking at that as an opportunity to invest some of these proceeds they have obtained from selling over 83.4% of their stake in Sidian Bank of Kenya. And that's exactly how investors think. Investors think of the next big thing, the next opportunity to invest in. They are never stagnant. And as an investor, you have to look at what is happening on the market and get to know exactly where to invest your money at the exact moment that movement is happening. Now, the Kenyan elections, as I've already said, are creating an opportunity for these, companies, that investment companies, because as you know, governments during elections definitely need money. And there's no way they will access this money apart from borrowing, because we don't have assets as governments here in Uganda, in East Africa. Of course, Kenya is one of the countries struggling with debt, with over 70.7 billion US dollar debt and 64.4% of debt to GDP ratio. It is the country with the highest debt distress on the East African continent, and this has created a lot of problems with external borrowing. And so they're looking at borrowing domestically, and this creates opportunities as well in the financial markets world. Thank you. We are still walking into the realm of financial markets. We'll be having later on the show Mr. Louis Kizito, who is a counsel and a lawyer who is specialized in fintechs as well, coming to talk about money. Money, and especially money in cryptocurrency. Is it worth it right now to invest? Is it legal? What's happening around the cryptocurrency world? We'll be talking to him very soon, but let's first go for a short break. We'll be right back shortly. Don't go anywhere.